I've got an amazing wife. At the time, I had very young kids, and we were all in on Redeye. Our house had been flooded a year before in the 2011 floods, and we decided to build Redeye to create a future, an economic future for us that was sustainable. I literally raised our seed round in December 13, and then packed a bag in January 14 and went to the US for 5 months. Getting on trade missions is, I think, one of the best strategies that you can do as a founder. Open doors and get access to people that you just would not normally get access to. I've had a couple of occasions over the journey of Redeye where you get to the end of the year and you've been going so damn hard that you just have no fuel left in the tank.
Wayne, thanks heaps for joining us for the podcast. Super excited and pumped to have you on the show and appreciate your time today.
Aaron, Don, it's super great to be here. So thanks for having me.
Mate, I think we got to kick off with the big news that you've recently shared with the exit and the Redeye acquisition.
It's pretty exciting. I started Redeye in 2012 and wanted to solve a problem that we saw in the engineering mining sector. It was a long journey, grew that business globally. And along the way, we had a bunch of companies come to us and say, hey, we like what you're doing. Let's start a conversation about potentially acquiring you. And it was early and often too early. And Accruent came a couple of times knocking, and it wasn't the right time. And I guess early last year, they were dealing with one of our investors, and they said, hey, we really Redeye, let's have a conversation. Accruent is an amazing business. They're part of the 40th Group, a very large US industrial company. They've been doing a super good job growing and servicing their customers. And the acquisition of Redeye was always a goal of mine. Build a company, grow it globally, and exit it. To exit it to a company like Accruent is really fantastic. It was a huge team effort. The board led by a really great chairman named Darren Stanley, investors from EIC and Macquarie and others who really did the heavy lifting. And we have a great lawyer named Brad Vinning, who has been with us for every major transaction along the journey of Redeye, like every capital raising, every major thing. And he and his team did a great job. And Randall, as CEO, running the business through a transition period. Steve Hunter, who Randall brought in as a CFO last year, really did a fantastic job. And I was lucky as I stepped down as CEO 18 months ago, and Randall took the reins and put a leadership team in, and they've really done the heavy lifting for the last 18 months and run the business, grown the business, and with EIC and Macquarie's help and Darren's help, exited the business, and the team are going to a great home, and the integration has just started, and they're getting new laptops and integrating into the Accruent family. And I think it's going to be wonderful for them and wonderful for our customers. And it's great for shareholders. We're able to exit at a good multiple. And in this kind of climate, it's really challenging to get a startup exit away. And so, yeah, I'm extremely grateful for everyone involved.
Well done. And it was all straight lines, smooth sailing. Everything just always worked out to the perfect ending.
You know how it works, Don. Startup life is that up and to the right straight line. And that image of that crazy kind of mess that our founder actually goes on, and the poor people that work with them go on as well. That's definitely not true.
And who were your customers at Redeye? Just for listeners to understand, who are you selling to? Because I'd love to just unpack a few of your learnings of that early go-to-market, what you learned, what you did right, what you did wrong, because a lot of listeners are trying to solve for, how do I grow the revenues of my business?
It is probably the most important question that I think needs to be at the front of mind of every founder every day. And our first customer was BHP. And Redeye solves a problem of managing engineering content. So engineering drawings and documents for really large asset owners, not engineering companies, the actual owner or operator of the asset.
Yeah,
and
right.
so we were really one of Australia's, if not Australia's, first pure enterprise SaaS company. When we founded Redeye, there was no startup ecosystem. I was just reflecting actually the trip Randall and I did to the US in 2013, where we went and met Nigel Warren, who was the Austrade trade commissioner in San Fran. That was our first stop. And he said to us, so show us your pitch deck. And we're like, what's that? Right? And we went and met a guy named Jason Seed, who was the trade commissioner for New South Wales at the time.
Yeah.
And that afternoon, he helped us write our pitch deck. And we were pitching that night at the Rosewood pub on Sandhill Road, right? Yeah. Anyway, the journey's been long, and our customers are all really large institutional grade assets. So think mining companies, power utilities, water utilities, councils, oil and gas companies, cities like the city of Seattle, or most of the power network in New Zealand is a customer of Redeye.
What did you find in terms of a young company generating leads, getting to the right person to have that conversation? Was there one approach that worked for you, or did you find multiples?
We started in 2012, and as you can imagine, the market's matured and changed over the last 10, 11 years. In the beginning, it was entirely relationship driven. We went and built relationships with people. We listened to them. We demonstrated that what we were trying to do was solve the problem they had. And we were able to enter into an enterprise sales process, which is consuming, timely, and takes a long time and requires a lot of effort. And so we did that. As the business matured, we were able to use a lot more online marketing. We had a lot more lead generation. Yeah, we had a number of really good people in marketing, and Vasily, who ran our marketing team towards the end of my stint as CEO, really was able to build a solid marketing engine. And so, for example, when we would get to the bottom of the sales funnel with a really important prospect, take a big water utility, for example, we would have a very focused social media marketing campaign where we're engaging all of their key stakeholders with white papers and examples of the benefits we provided to other companies. We would really try and build a community of advocates around these organizations. And it was worth it, right? Like, you think about the average contract value of one of our customers, and they are millions and millions of dollars, and they don't churn. The investment is worth it.
And finding those people to have those conversations with, that sounds like it was a pre-LinkedIn kind of era. So you were just turning up to events or channel partners, or word of mouth took over after a while?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time doing conferences and really tried to embed ourselves in the industries that we were targeting, that our customers were in. So the power industry, the water industry, the mining industry. And as a result of that, we would work hard to build really good relationships with asset owners. We literally asked our existing clients for connections and referrals to others in their network. We also ran a bunch of events as well, a bunch of conferences ourselves. We invited all of our clients along, and we would always have events where we had clients and prospects together. We'd have dinners where we literally choreographed who sat next to who. So we'd have clients talking to prospects. And I have an ethos of treating every client like a genuine friend. And I try hard to build great friendships with my clients. And I'm incredibly grateful for many of the friendships I have today who are clients, right? And they were really helpful to us. Like some of the team at Snowy Hydro or SA Power or Urban Utilities, just to name a few, they're super great people.
And mate, you referenced, as you were talking about the exit, acquisition, you talked about all the others in the tribe that helped you get there. And knowing a bit about your journey, you went to the US very early, right? Like in terms of that trip. And shout out to Jason Seed, who's actually in Brizzy at the moment. We're catching up for a beer next week. What impact did that first trip to the US have? And what was your thinking going into that market so early in your trajectory rather than just staying in Australia?
Originally, we were focused on the mining industry in Australia. And there was a day in 2013 where we got an inbound inquiry from a company in Peru, a company in Hong Kong, and a company in South Africa. And we were doing no marketing.
If people are wondering what product market fit smells like, it smells like that.
Yeah. So we were literally like, we need to think about who is our target market. And I think back then, this was really the beginning of the innovation or the startup ecosystems. We were like, okay, we've probably got to take a tiger by the tail. How are we going to scale? And where should we be trying to grow our revenue? We wanted to look into North America because we thought back then, well, in fact, it was back then, that was the only place to raise venture capital. Really, there wasn't a venture capital community in Australia at that time that was focused on enterprise SaaS. Blackbird was just getting started. Airtree was just getting started. And I'd spoken to all those guys, right? We went to the US looking to see if what we were doing in Australia was relevant to customers in the US and if there were investors that could help us grow.
And from memory, you had a pretty close association with one of the state, was it a water board or someone that out of Houston or elsewhere that kind of played a bit of a pivotal role for you guys early in the US?
Yeah. So what happened was I literally raised our seed round in December 13 and then packed a bag in January 14 and went to the US for 5 months and traveled around going to conferences, meeting potential clients. I already had a network, right, from my previous roles and things I was doing. And so trying to see if we could build a pipeline of sales opportunities. Got to Houston and the Trade and Investment Queensland office was just opening in Houston. And I got to know the David Camalingo, who was the Trade and Investment Commissioner back then. We set up an office in his office, which was fantastic. And we plugged into the US, so the Australian American Chamber of Commerce in Houston, great network. We ran a couple of events that they promoted for us and we started to build a sales pipeline there. And so we started actually first office in Houston in 2014, first employee in 2014, grew that team to 3 people, 5 people, 9 people, 11 people, and then back to 3 people because the oil and gas market tanked.
Yeah.
So we literally won a bunch of contracts and then lost those contracts. Did a great proof of concept with BHP Petroleum and you really thought that was going to end up somewhere, but ultimately just wasn't the right time. So we had a really hard entry into the US and we scaled up and scaled back down and came back, licked our wounds, learned a lot of lessons about market timing, about which industries and how do we build a bit of diversity in our customer base so we're more resilient if market cycles change. And came back here and marketed to power and water utilities instead of mining and oil and gas. And that was really helpful. And it was building the water utility industry sector here that created an opportunity in 2017 when there was a trade mission from Nevada that came to Queensland. I got invited to go to a lunch and I was sitting at the lunch and introduced to the general manager of Southern Nevada Water Authority. And we got talking and we're on a bus to the next event. And he got talking about WaterStart and how WaterStart helps him solve innovation problems. One of the problems he had was managing engineering drawings. I literally pulled out my mobile, showed him my mobile app on the phone. And I've been looking for a solution for this problem for 3 years. Can't find it anywhere. We were getting off the bus and I'm like, hey, do you want to have dinner tonight? We had dinner. We agreed in principle that I'd come over and we'd have a detailed conversation. So I got on a plane like 2 weeks later, went to Nevada and went backwards and forwards. I went twice and then I sent a couple of people over to do a bit of a requirements analysis and demonstrate we had a bit of depth in the business and it wasn't just me. We then, on a handshake, agreed. So I went to Nevada the third time, must have been 2016. And so it was the end of 2016, went there the third time. And we agreed that they would become a Redeye client and that we would move a group of our team to America, set up an office in Las Vegas. That would help them with their goal of diversifying their economy and creating new jobs locally. So that's a really interesting thing to think about, right? It's not just about the sales sometimes, it's about the role that those large customers play in their own economy. And so tapping into that was really valuable. And so we went over there in 2017. 3 people moved over, 4 of us went there. We ran a project. We had a $50,000 purchase order. That was it. And so I took a huge calculated risk. And so did 3 people who moved their families and lives over to North America. And that they're a fantastic customer today. They've been using Redeye. They're an advocate for us everywhere. And we're incredibly grateful.
We recorded an episode of Tribe Talking this morning, and one of the lines we discussed was luck favors the prepared and fortune favors the brave. And so there's a couple of things I want to call out there. So your original raising the capital and going over there for 5 months, you obviously had a family, you had all of these things. I'd love to unpack just how you did that, because the other thing we believe in building a business is there's no business without sacrifice and structure achieve strategy. So obviously you had some structural elements family-wise that allowed you to do that. And then that luck that happened of being on that bus, that would only have happened if you were brave and you were prepared and you were in market. So what are your thoughts on some of those aspects?
There's a couple of things, Don, and I absolutely agree, right? Aaron and I have had a saying in the ecosystem since we got to know each other that give before you get. And that kind of be helpful to people, which I think is the essence of entrepreneurship, right? Be interested in other people's problems, be helpful to other people. And from that comes opportunities. And I'm lucky. I had call it lucky, right? Like I've got an amazing wife. At the time I had very young kids and we were all in on Redeye. Our house had been flooded a year before in the 2011 floods. And we decided to build Redeye to create a future, an economic future for us that was sustainable. And I didn't take a salary for the first couple of years, nothing, right? Randall and I were both putting cash in out of our own pockets. And when we got the seed round of investors, we weren't looking for seed. We were looking for board members and they offered to invest. That was an incredible, I'm incredibly grateful for them,
If
right?
you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money.
Exactly. And thoroughly believe in that. And not just going to the US, but pretty much entering every major customer was opportunity led. It was luck. And that luck doesn't come without preparation and effort and sacrifice. I traveled pretty much every week for 9.5 years while I was at Redeye. And this interstate and internationally, I lived away from home for a couple of years and like literally living in an apartment Monday to Friday or Tuesday to Thursday. And the sacrifice is huge. And I did that so that I had more capacity, more time to focus on doing stuff that would help build Redeye.
Yeah. And when I first got to know you, Wayne, which would have been around 2013-ish, I think. But I remember your travel schedule. I remember you would be flying back from the US and coming into a startup working group pretty much straight from the airport and then straight into Redeye. And like for me, what stands out with those stories is being in the right place at the right time, which requires a consistent pattern behavior of showing up, but your conviction to follow through when opportunity presents itself. And so it's one thing to have the conversation on the bus, but it's another thing to then be on a plane weeks later and to back that up with follow-up trips and to get the contract done. But yeah, well done on having that conviction. And what I love about what you just shared is that was a full family commitment. And the support that we get from our partners on this journey, from our kids, the sacrifices we make. And yeah, really just knowing you personally, I'm stoked that this has all played out the way it has for you and the family now with the acquisition.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. It really is. It takes a community. It takes an ecosystem to build a startup, right? Sure. I was one of the founders and at the front of in the spotlight, so to speak. I couldn't have done what I did without an amazing family. My kids both worked in Redeye and did a really good job. And then on top of that, we were lucky to attract an awesome team. I think back to some of the key people who led different parts of Redeye over the last 10 years. And I'm truly grateful to have worked with them and watch them grow as well. It's just awesome.
One thing on that. So what also struck me about you early on, you had that schedule, but yet going back to that mantra of give before you get, give first, you would give so much time to the ecosystem and those very early days of what we were trying to do to support the ecosystem. Did that ever create tension? It's one thing to take time out of the family essentially to build a business for the future economic value and everything else, but to then go and donate so much of your time to the ecosystem, to others. How did you balance that with family and also I think with investors and the team and everyone else? Was that ever a friction point for you?
Yeah, definitely. It's always a friction point, right? There's never enough time in the day and everyone has competing priorities. And I think one of the things that made it work for us was the benefits we got from investing time in the ecosystem were quite tangible. Getting to meet someone who became a mentor, who introduced me to the CEO of a large organization that became a customer. Those things were directly related to activity or effort I put into the ecosystem and building Redeye's profile in the ecosystem, attracting talent, having the universities, like going to universities and taking the time to encourage students to get into the startup sector helped Redeye, right? Like we ultimately employed close to 40 people directly out of university, giving them their first job when they had no experience, but they had the right energy, the right passion, the right desire to learn. And it was at a time where there was no talent pool for startup tech talent in Queensland. So we had to do innovative things to build the talent pool. We had to do innovative things to build brand and awareness and to create a sales pipeline. And that involved being very active in the ecosystem. I think that stuff paid off.
Yeah. And it touches on something we were talking about on the podcast earlier today around if you see a problem with the ecosystem, take the entrepreneurial energy and go and solve it. And yeah, I love the way you built the ecosystem around Redeye that ultimately also supported Redeye and others. I think,
Yeah. Like it
mate,
was fun, right?
oh, it was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Like the people I met, to your point, talent is one thing, but the networks you build through those sorts of
Mhm.
roles just pay dividends. The shareholders we have at Tribe came from that era of giving. Mate, do you have any tips going back to the US bit? Do you have any tips for early stage founders that are building locally? They're getting some traction. Any tips on how they should be thinking about UK, US markets? How do they do that exploration piece? How do they get the inputs to make decisions around that?
This international expansion is such an important topic for an early stage company. One of the things that I think is, I guess one of the lessons I've learned is you've got to get your base sorted out first. So you've got to have enough proof points, enough data, enough revenue, had enough customer experience to refine your customer processes, your support process, your commercial models, get that kind of stuff sorted so that you're building off something solid. And we were at it. I think if I was founding a company today, I would put the company into one or two categories. Is it an enterprise sales company or is it a consumer based company? If it's a consumer product based company or a product led company, then you're going to pick up customers in whatever jurisdiction your product services, and you're going to get pulled into those global markets through your customers, right? And I think there's a strategy around what do you do if you're a product-led company with global customers? And then there's a separate strategy around if you're sales-led or an enterprise or a B2B company where you need to go and run sales motions locally, right? If you're the latter kind of company, I would encourage every company today to really try and understand the local market, understand the TAM, the SAM and the SOM, and go, what part of the local market can I win? And try and win that. And try and win that first, because that gives you the platform to scale from. I wouldn't rush into an international market before I got my house in order. And yeah, we did. We went early and it cost us a lot of money. And I had some investors at the time going, "Hey, Wayne, you're going too early." And they were right. Right? They were right. And so that was a really good lesson for me. And yeah, so I just think that's important. When you do go into a market, it's always better to have people in market who are going to amplify your message and be helpful. Well, I think Trade and Investment Queensland, I think the different business councils, whether it's the AmCham in America or the Indian Business Council, if you're going into India or whatever it is, right? Get access to those networks before you leave. Start to build relationships, get advice on how to enter into those markets. I've built incredible relationships with the US Embassy, the US Consulate. They were Georgie and the team there, Duncan, incredibly helpful in our US strategy. As I said, David Camalingo, incredibly helpful. TIQ, I absolutely encourage any startup to go and work with their local trade investment office before they go. Getting on trade missions is, I think, one of the best strategies that you can do as a founder. Going with a minister that can open doors and get access to people that you just would not normally get access to. And as long as you take the initiative to follow up and are proactive with it, then it's not a waste of time or money. But if you just go for the junket, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, we find when we run our US and UK missions, the cohort splits into a couple of different groups. One, they find actually that market, either the US or the UK, isn't for them. And that's a really great lesson early on, because then they don't waste it. And then the other cohort splits into two again. Those that go over that find that the market is for them, but they're not able to find a way to resource and follow up properly, versus the others get consumed by the day-to-day demands. It was a bit of a junket in the end. And we're always trying to work with the people that come with us to say, okay, what are you going to do to get the resources and the focus to actually turn this into an opportunity?
Yeah, I totally agree, Don. And you have to be willing to get back on a plane and go back there. And that's That requires commitment, and you have to be able to. We had a rule at Redeye, right? Like, you don't travel anywhere unless you've got 3 to 4 customer meetings or prospect meetings a day. And so even if we were looking for venture capital, we would be trying to do customer or prospect meetings at the same time. Couldn't do one and neglect the other. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember my first trip to Silicon Valley, which would have been maybe 2012. The advice I had was aim for 100 coffee chats and have at least 30 of them lined up before you go, and then blank space for a week following for all the introductions you would get from those 30. But you have to hustle, man. You got to get out and leverage every opportunity you can, knock on every door you can on those trips.
Hustle and urgency.
Yeah, absolute urgency.
Yeah. And one of the things, like in the US, is you've got to go to where your customers are, right? There's a lot of excitement around going to Silicon Valley, and it's great to see other tech companies and what they do and build networks. It's fantastic. And it inspires you, and it gives you ideas that you can come back and implement into your business. And that's really valuable. The other really valuable thing is going to where your customers are, going and putting yourself in their ecosystem and getting to start to build those relationships.
Yeah, 100%. It's why we always do a 2-city trip in the US in particular, just for that comparative, and also just the different runway, the access to talent, competition for talent, all those things. Mate, you've mentioned networks a lot, and you're kicking off a new venture now, aptly named Prtnr Ventures, which absolutely speaks to your character. But tell us more about that.
I'm really excited to kick off something again myself, and going back to founding an organization. Prtnr Ventures, in the first instance, is going to be a private investment company. So we're going to do venture investing, and I'm grateful for the investments I've done through you guys, right? And super excited to continue that partnership. So that's the first part, investing in great companies. And the second part is I'm currently investigating establishing a venture studio. And I really want to help build some of the next great companies. I personally love that kind of 0 to 1 phase of helping a founder, a subject matter expert, someone that's got an idea that really understands the problem space, but doesn't know how to build a company. I like the idea of going, can I help you validate the problem? Can I help you design a business model that takes into consideration the problem, the customers, the sales model that's appropriate there, the pricing model, the person's skill sets, that kind of stuff. And ultimately helping them build an MVP, test that, and get themselves ready to potentially raise an early round.
Any particular markets?
Don, I'm really passionate about climate tech and health tech. So for me, the thematics of those two areas, my tagline is partnering with companies that are creating a sustainable and vibrant future. And the sustainable part is really obviously climate tech. It's also health tech, right? We've got an aging population. We've got a ridiculously large federal government investment in the NDIS, and it's only going to keep on growing. And so I think there's a climate and a health epidemic that needs to be solved. And then if you can solve those things, there's no point solving those things if you can't have a vibrant future, right? Lots of opportunities for your kids, your family, society. And so for me, investing into things that create a sustainable and vibrant future is, I think, what's going to light my fire.
Yeah, that's exciting. And what's interesting with your journey is you had Redeye, you made the transition out of the CEO role, and in between like Redeye and this Prtnr Ventures opportunity, you've had a couple of things. One was as Queensland's chief entrepreneur, and then you've had some time with QIC, really helping create some opportunities for the ecosystem. Would love to, what was your biggest learning from the chief entrepreneur role, and how did you find that environment?
The chief entrepreneur role, I think, is a super important role for Queensland and for our ecosystem. And it's a role that you can't take on lightly, because like anything, if you're going to make an impact, you have to go all in. And I was actually asked a couple of times to do the role, and to which I said no. And it wasn't until the Premier said to me, I really need you to do this. And I went and spoke to my chairman at Redeye and said, hey, this is a really important role for our ecosystem. It's also a really valuable role for Redeye in terms of building a brand and profile and continue attracting customers and talent. And so I got the board's support to do that role. The role was, I did 330 speaking engagements in 18 months. It was insane. And it's a volunteer role. You don't get paid for it. I was trying to run Redeye. I did a capital raising at the same time at Redeye, raised $16 million. and was doing the chief role. And at the same time, just for the shits and giggles, I had a motorcycle accident, tried to kill myself, and my mum died, right? So it was a rough period, a lot going on in our world. And that kind of ultimately led me to, I think, burning out and to the board and I going, hey, it's time for a change. Finished that at the end of 2022. And one of the key things, one of the last things I did as chief entrepreneur was work with Queensland Treasury on, we've been investing a lot as an ecosystem into creating startups and educating founders. What we need now is to attract more attract more capital into the ecosystem. And so Queensland Treasury have been running a project to look at the amount of capital in our ecosystem, how we compare to other states in Australia, and what was the opportunity. And from that, we designed this thing called the Venture Capital Development Fund, which was a fund to basically invest into venture capital firms to attract more venture firms to establish investment teams and offices here in Queensland, and to back some accelerators that would produce investment-ready deal flow for those venture firms and for the broader investor ecosystem in Queensland. And so for the last 12 months, I've been working at QIC to basically the RFP that we took to market, go to market. We evaluated, like we were blown away at the response. We had 55 venture firms apply. We had 35 accelerators. We're expecting a 10th of that. And so we then had to do a first pass analysis on all 90 companies. We then went into detailed DD with a handful, like 10 plus venture firms and 5 or 6 accelerators. And we had so much demand. We had $800 million demand for a program that was initially funded to $75 million. So yeah, the government has just extended the funding for that program up to $130 million because they saw the benefit that this could provide to Queenslanders. And so really excited about that. And I thoroughly enjoyed working at QIC. The team there, I learned so many lessons around investing because they invest into other funds. They also do co-investments alongside some of the world's best funds into amazing arrangement of companies from early stage VC-based investments into mid-market buyout kind of investments. And yeah, then doing the VCDF as well gave me an enormous opportunity to do DD on a bunch of really great funds and really learn about the status of those funds and what makes them tick and what looks like best practice in terms of all the investment documents and everything they do, how they operate. And so I'm able to take all of those learnings and the relationships into Prtnr Ventures. And that's really exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. And that initiative, the VCDF is, and I think time will prove this, just such a critical thing for the ecosystem. If you reflect on the Israel ecosystem, a lot of their success was attributed to YOSMA intervention way back, would that be like 20, 25 years ago now, with their fund of funds approach and helping local VCs partner with Silicon Valley VCs for knowledge transfer, and similar with the Scottish Development Fund and what's been attributed to that. I think these types of initiatives end up having very long-term effects that play out. And so really excited to see what comes of the program and where it goes. And yeah, full credit to you and the team for, like Nick Guest at QIC as well, instrumental in that. And the role of Treasury, it's no small feat to pull something like that off in an ecosystem of, like we know on this side of the table, very noisy, very opinionated investors who want their share of it as well. So well done navigating all of that.
Mate, it's a real team effort, right? The team at QIC, there are 6 people working on that project and they were working tirelessly and still are, right? Because we're still in the middle of DD on a number of funds. And a shout out to the QIC team. They are really, really experienced, really skilled and very genuine people working really hard for the benefit of the ecosystem and that they often don't get noticed or get recognized for the work they do. And so like they're great. And it's the same with the Queensland Treasury team, right? One of the things that I learned, Don, back to your original question, as chief entrepreneur is there is such an amazing caliber of people in Queensland government, really high performing people that really care. And when you find those people and get to partner with them, you can make an amazing impact on our society, on our economy and for our future. And that's one of the reasons why I keep on wanting to give back, because I know that it genuinely has impact, not just for us, but for our kids.
Yeah. And I was having a conversation with the Chief Entrepreneur's Office in South Australia this week and also Minister Dawson in WA. And that VCDF program is now looking to be copied by those states and adapted for their environments. And Yeah, equally, Minister Dawson in WA was talking about, wow, we need a chief entrepreneur, like looking at what's happening in Queensland. What does that look like? I'm curious, mate. I want to ask you, throw you a couple of little left field questions. Knowing what you had to give in that role and how taxing that was, do you think it should be a paid role, or do you think it should remain an unpaid role?
I definitely think it should be a paid role. I think the effort and time that it takes to do that role, comes at a real cost, an economic cost, a lost opportunity cost. So I definitely think it should be a paid role. It needs to retain the autonomy that it has. And I was very lucky that I had, great support from the Premier, great support from Sterling as the Minister for Innovation, and that really had complete free rein. And Rachel Hunter, in her role as the DG for Premier and Cabinet, was just a genuine champion and supporter of the role. And so I had enormous opportunity to make impact. But yeah, definitely, I think should be a paid role. One of the things I'm going to do as Prtnr Ventures is do a bit of advisory work. And so I'm going to I was keen to speak to WA and see if I could help them with that kind of stuff. So yeah.
We'll put you in touch.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're keen. Mate, through all that as well. And I remember when you had your motorbike accident and just seeing you injured after that, but you still kept showing up. Like, your pace of operation was phenomenal. And I know you and I have personally talked about this before, but can you share with the listeners, where do you go to find that and build that resilience? Like, I know that you took up ultra running there for a phase. You're a big advocate of adventures and getting out of our physical space into a different headspace. And you and I share a lot in common on that. But where do you go to, and what do you recommend for founders in terms of stress management?
I think I've got three different sets of tools that I use. The first set of tools is podcasts. One of the things that helped me the most as a founder going on the journey was to listen to podcasts from other founders, and founders that were like orders of magnitude further along in the journey, and them being frank and honest about the fact that every day is a struggle. Every day is hard work. It really doesn't, sure, in some areas the pressure comes off, but in other areas the pressure comes on that you don't even realize is going to come. And so having those podcasts was an incredible resource to realize I'm not alone. So that's the first area. The second area was community, and the number of conversations we had. Your offsite last year, guys, was a great place to connect with other founders and to share stories and build that camaraderie and get resilience. And I think doing things like that offsites, going to Tropical Innovation Fest or Forward Fest or any of those conferences and making the time to connect with other founders is incredibly valuable. So community is the second one. And I really encourage people to don't get too busy being a founder that you don't take time to build community, because I think that's critical. And besides that, community helps anyway, right? Introduction to VCs and talent and the ability to reference check people and share tactics that are working and all those kind of things. So that's important. Then the third one is obviously health and fitness. Because my mind never stops, I need to do fitness activities that are fully engaging. And so snowboarding, trail running, adventure motorbike riding, you have to be so present doing those things that you can't think about work. And I couldn't go on a holiday and sit on the beach. It doesn't work. But I'm going snowboarding for a couple of weeks next week. And just that being active, being mentally engaged, I find that kind of moving meditation really is incredibly re-energizing and refreshing.
I think it was Elon that said that holiday is just email with a view.
Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned before about burnout, and obviously Tribe is really focused around the humanistic aspect and founder performance. In hindsight, having come through the other end of that, what were some of the early warnings that you missed that you think founders tend to miss? What were some of the things that you would do differently? And then what got you to the other side of the burnout phase?
Dino, I burnt out a couple of times on my journey at Redeye. I had a panic attack on my motorbike riding to work one day and ended up in hospital for a couple of days. That was very uncomfortable, that I was having a heart attack. I remember after I did my Series A, we got right down to the wire before the Series A, and I closed the round. I was in Sydney and I went back to the hotel and I literally got sick and I couldn't leave the hotel room for 3 days. All right. I've had a couple of occasions over the journey of Redeye where you get to the end of the year and you've been going so damn hard that you just have no fuel left in the tank. And I think right now or going forward, I try really hard to have way better balance in my life. So
Could you have built Redeye without that? Is that par for the course that we need to try and support founders and accept that if you're going to play the big game, that's the reality? Or could you have done it different? It's a bit like people with young kids saying, oh, you should get more sleep. What are you talking about? That ain't going to fucking happen.
I think balance is a thing that you do in stages, not in hours and days. And I think there are periods of time where you have to go all in and get the outcome. You have to win, right? You have to deliver the outcome. And that just takes an enormous amount of focus and attention and follow up and proactivity and curiosity and creative ways of acting or creative actions. And so you got to be on, right? And all the time. And that, you do that for a block, and then you need to give yourself a period of time. And whether that is starting a little later in the morning so you can go for a walk or whatever it is, whatever strategy you have. But I don't believe that you can grow a successful company in a capitally constrained environment with going really hard.
We could probably agree that getting to the panic attack phase, let's not advocate that. There's probably a few steps prior. So please don't mishear us. We're just saying that if you think it's a walk in the park, it's not. But I think Wayne would agree that maybe we went a wee bit hard.
Yeah, look, definitely. And for the last couple of years, I tried really hard to focus and fit exercise into my regime. I tried really hard to eat well. I tried really hard to reduce the amount of alcohol I had. And one of the most important things was having a good routine to get to sleep. So for me, one of the things that I do is, it might sound a little silly, but box breathing and progressive visualized relaxation of my body. There'd be periods where I was doing that every single night because I was running so hard. And that was my way to decompress and get a little bit of balance before getting up and going again the next morning.
Yeah. The other thing I love, Wayno, is the fact that through all that, you were open and transparent with others and shared what you were going through. And I remember you introducing programs at Redeye for your teams, for your staff, to support them and to share some insights and lessons around that as well. And I think that's something founders can sometimes forget, is they're feeling all of this and we're under the pressure and we're driving our teams, but we need to also be cognizant of how the teams are then performing and making sure that they're properly supported through that journey as well.
Yeah, when you grow a team, we grew Redeye to about 100 people at one point in time. And they were all working really hard. And so we introduced a thing called recharge days. And that was really powerful. One recharge day every 6 months. And you could literally call your boss the night before and say, hey, I need a recharge day. And then we changed it from being one recharge day a half to, for every year of service above 3, you got that many recharge days per year, right? And so that really was a way of us giving back to our staff, because it is a true team effort. And if you're delivering a large project or if you need to ship something on a timeline, then people have to work over and above, and there's no room for people that kind of have a sense of entitlement. So you got to hire great people and then help them to work really great, and then give them the recognition and also the time to recharge from those of sustained work.
Yeah. And I think for me, also being okay with asking for help, right? I think this is something I'm still learning. But yeah, when you're in the thick of it, not being afraid of asking for help and actually just putting that call out to your network and others.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about vulnerability and being authentic. And I think some people are scared to be genuine. I don't know. I feel you build good connections with people by truly being helpful to people. You build good connections with people by being genuine yourself and sharing some of the experiences you've been through, that to let them know that they're not alone. And that's a risk, because other people, not everyone's going to see that positively. Some people will take the piss, right? And, I've certainly met a bunch of people like that. You just take the good with the bad, I think, and have to be resilient when people don't really appreciate it.
Some of the stuff that we're working on with people is, how do you really develop that authenticity through self-confidence. So then that way they can roll into resilience. There's always a group of people at the supporting end. And if you've got supporters, you're going to have detractors. And I remember when I was doing my speaking gigs to begin with, negativity or people that always gave a lot of pushback, I always got a little bit concerned. But then you realized actually in a group of people, if there was someone who was overly negative, what would happen is all the more supportive people would come to counteract that. So you didn't need to put too much energy into it. The world started to solve that for you, but developing that resilience through self-confidence, I think, is just really important.
Yeah, I totally agree.
+1 on the motorbikes for mental health. I am missing my motorbike, and
We need to go
always,
mate.
oh, I'm just going to buy something. I'll buy a little electric scooter so I can ride with you again.
Love it. You've got Prtnr Ventures. What are your predictions for this year ahead? What are you most excited about?
Prediction this year is that I think capital is still going to be hard to come by. So for early stage companies. So back to your original question of sales, and I think my focus or my advice to founders is focus on revenue growth. And revenue growth is a great indicator of value creation or enterprise value, and therefore makes it way easier to raise capital. So that's the kind of thing that I'll be helping the companies that I'm invested in with. How do I help them grow? That's really what I care about. I want to be helpful to the portfolio companies that I'm investing in. I actually am really looking forward to that. I'm keen to partner with some customers, and so find organizations that care about climate, that care about health, and see if I can't help them find early stage companies that can solve the problems they have. So I'm excited about doing that.
That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mate, looking forward to working alongside you on the journey and with what you build out.
Likewise, guys, I'm super excited about what you guys are doing and think you provide awesome value to your portfolio. And I encourage heaps of other companies to have a chat to you guys as well about how you guys can help them expand into the UK and the US. I don't think there is any other VC firm focused on doing those two things that has the level of experience or networks that you guys have. So yeah, certainly I'd encourage any of my portfolio companies to come and talk to you if that's important milestone for them this year too.
We love having you in the tribe, and the insights you've given today are going to be so helpful for founders and investors. So thank you for, again, giving your time.
Great to catch up, guys. Have a great day.
Cheers.